Hey y'all, so if you've been following my videos, you know that last time I did a book review off of an R.C. Lewis novel. So I went and got her first one, her debut novel. So R.C. Lewis, this one's called Stitching Snow. It's a retelling of Snow White. And again, just like her other book that I reviewed, I really, really liked it. This one followed the fairy tale of Snow White a little bit more than the other one followed the fairy tale of the Wild Swans. This one was a little bit more exact. There were obviously the equivalent of the dwarves in the original fairy tale. There was mining involved, an evil stepmother, and, you know, a lot more parallels than in the Wild Swans. It was still very, very well done. This one, though, didn't keep my attention quite as much as her second novel. I'm not sure if it's just because it was a more familiar fairy tale. It could also be because in 1 week I am going to Disney World, and so I think I'm feeling a little bit rushed when it comes to reading library books that I have to go return before I leave. So maybe that was part of it. I wasn't as focused. In Stitching Snow, Essie is the main character. She's the protagonist, and she loves to tinker. She deals with technology, fixes it, helps the miners with their technology as well. And so in that way, it reminded me of Cinder. Hopefully you've read Cinder. If you haven't, you need to. These books are fantastic. But Cinder, there's multiple fairy tale retellings. And Cinder was published in 2012, whereas Stitching Snow was 2014. I just noticed a lot of similarities. Not that it was a bad thing. Recently I talked about similarities in books. There were enough differences that I don't think that it draws away from either of them. They're just similarities at the same time, because Stitching Snow, like Lewis's other novel, takes place in space, basically. Futuristic technology is very different worlds, different planets, crossing between them, similar to the Cinder series. So lots of parallels, but it's a popular thing right now. And again, even though there were parallels, I didn't feel like it was taking away from Stitching Snow or anything like that. And again, Lewis did a great job of not spending forever world building. And when it comes to the technology stuff that Essie does in this book, when she fixes drones and deals with the ships that can fly between the worlds, the planets, and things like that, I didn't need to understand the tech to understand what she was doing. And the term stitching, right there in the title, that's what Essie calls it when she puts those pieces back together, when she tinkers with the drones and fixes the ships and things like that. She calls it stitching. And so even then, it just had to be phrases like, oh, I stitched this cord and then I was able to stitch this disc, you know, whatever. And I don't have to understand the semantics of that to understand what she's doing. It wasn't a plot hole. It didn't confuse me, things like that. Again, something I loved about Lewis's books, both of them, is that there is the little romance and the love story, but it's not a huge focus. It is a focus. It doesn't become overpowering. It's not like a lot of YA books that you read that are so much about the romance, which I love. It's got adventure, it's sci-fi, it's fantasy, romance. Essie has to figure out who she is. There's trust issues and family issues, and at one point it got, I don't know if the word I would use is dark. At one point it just got a little, I guess, uncomfortable. But not in a way that I don't recommend this book. I was just a little bit surprised. I hadn't expected that, and looking back, maybe I should have. There were a few warning signs, not as many as I would have thought, though. So at one point I was like, oh my goodness, but it was so small, and it gets taken care of and resolved, and it keeps going, and it was just so good. Like I said, this was Lewis's debut novel, and I think her second one, oops, there goes my bookmark. Her second one was called something Starlight. I already forgot. That's so terrible. I do think it was better than Stitching Snow. I think that she's improving as she writes. It's interesting that both take place in this outer space planet world, and I hope that she continues with that, because she does a good job of developing these worlds, again, without boring world building that we have to read forever that no one actually wants to get through. I forgot the other thing I was going to say about this, but I really do like this. It was an interesting retelling of Snow White. I encourage you to check out R.C. Lewis and see what you think. And I am hoping to see a lot more from her. She's fabulous. Like I said, she knows ASLs. She apparently teaches calculus. I liked at the very beginning of her acknowledgement, she says, I wasn't supposed to do this. I was supposed to be a left-brained math teacher with an extra quirk that I can discuss calculus and sign language. I just like that. She didn't plan on writing a book. She just had this story to tell, and it worked out, and she does a great job. She does a really good job. So I recommend that you read anything by R.C. Lewis. She's fascinating, and I hope to see a lot more coming from her. Keep reading.